Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters. We're about to get started for our first semifinals of the day. Bloodyface versus Saiyan. The bans are in, and already a different take on what we know from our current matches here in week 1 of Grandmasters. We have the Demon Hunter banned away from Bloodyface. Very expected from Saiyan. Although you could also convince me of a few other things, but the Priest ban, another class that has been seeing rise in play, and very much so. I think there was so many questions heading into Grandmaster's first season, particularly around classes that received a lot of new cards, right? Of course, there's Demon Hunter, the new class. Everyone kind of knew how powerful that was. Was the hype justified, or is ladder stats overblown? And it seems like indeed Demon Hunter is the real deal for now, until we'll see the 420 patch tomorrow. Then Priest receiving an entire class rework, TJ, and then now starting to see play and being banned away, being a very consistent class overall for tournament performances. So what do you think now that we see these early lineups and bans?
Makes a lot of sense, right? Because the Bloodyface has shown that he has a good understanding of the combo. Demon Hunter obviously going 6-1 in Swiss showed good play on it yesterday. It also is just good, right? Especially if you consider the decks that Saiyan has. It's just kind of the best deck overall as far as win percentage goes. So you're getting that out of the way. And then if you look at the Priest matchups against Bloodyface's lineup, he has the Druid, which Priest has been able to find removal for that pretty consistently. He has the Warrior as well, which Saiyan has been having some trouble with, it feels, but he has been also squeaking out wins when it matters most. That's why he's in the top 4, but it's been close, right? And then a Hunter. So the Hunter deck is the Face Hunter, only Hunter brought to Americas, and we saw it take a pretty quick win in the games I saw it on Friday. So that matchup, there's pretty much no sample size for the specific Priest that Saiyan has versus the Face Hunter that Bloodyface has. But I can imagine that Priest probably does pretty well against it because it's got a lot of taunts and a lot of healing and a lot of AoE. So I like the bans from both sides.
All right, so we're going to see how that ends up panning out there. Even though there's a couple of similar classes here with the Warriors, you do have to keep in mind that Bloodyface with his Warrior is, definitely has some similarities to Saiyan, but ultimately there seems to be a little bit of a difference in philosophy because Bloodyface has more bombs and TJ, and Just Saiyan is a little bit more on the board-centric, building up with eggs and trying to get early tempo. So even though there are similar classes here in this head-to-head, there's actually a lot of differences down to even the same classes shared. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and take a look at the first deck that Bloodyface will be queuing up today. It is that Druid we've been seeing a lot of. Spell Druid has been so powerful when it works, but sometimes struggling a little bit on broadcast. So I feel like this deck has some high highs and some low lows. And, it really does depend also on the pilot. We've been seeing some turns where it feels like you can optimize even further, and we've seen players instantly regret some decisions that they've made because there's almost no point of return once you start committing to things.
Yeah, we've watched a lot of Druid over the past couple days, and this is our T-Mobile deck spotlight for the day, so we want to put some extra emphasis on breaking down this particular Druid from Bloodyface. He does run the double exotic Mount Seller and no Force Aid or Force of Nature, and this has been kind of a point of contention among a lot of players. There have been players that play one exotic Mount Seller, one Force Aid. There's been players that play even Force of Nature plus Aeroponics and Force Aid, and with the Kael'thas, like Silvername, who made it to the finals of Europe Grandmasters Swiss. He had kind of that whole package going on. Bloodyface opting for the double Mount Seller Kael'thas. Some debate there of whether or not all of those are needed because they kind of all 3 of them eat cheap spells, and the deck only has a certain amount, so is it really worth it? It also means that your Fungal Fortunes are more likely to hit minions since you have 3. So there's some back and forth there, but this has been a pretty consistent list for Bloodyface, and obviously with his record thus far across the Swiss and in the group stage over the course of the last 2 days, hasn't really lost much. So I have a lot of faith in him being able to pilot this spell druid or token druid. It said there, however you want to call it.
Yeah, so I think this token druid has a ton of power, a lot of versatility, and most importantly, it is reliable, very much like a T-Mobile 5G connection all over the world, all over the nation rather. And also, I use T-Mobile. I'm a T-Mobile customer, and all over the world as well. When I was allowed to travel internationally, I got coverage everywhere, and I didn't have to pay for any specific international plan for that travel. It was all covered with unlimited data. So shout out to T-Mobile. Thank you for sponsoring Hearthstone Esports and Hearthstone Grandmasters, helping you stay connected to what matters most, aka minions to the face. That's probably my best line. I think I peaked there in life, TJ. I don't think I can ever outdo that.
Nope.
Now, bloodyface is coming in with a lot of momentum, as we mentioned. He is the #1 seed from Swiss. He is also undefeated in the group stages, so he is 8-1 on his week of play. And again, this is where it really starts to hone in. Every single win today gives you an additional point and separates you from the pack. And we're going to start things off with this Demon Hunter versus the Druid. Demon Hunter has been given Druid fits. It is one of the classes that feels well outfitted to take down Druid. And it's particularly tricky when they have cards like Altruist and a really fast start, double Battle Fiend right out of the gate with a lot of ammo to back it up. Because when the Battle Fiend attacks, Frenzy Felwing will get out for free. Crimson Sigil Runner will also pick up a card.
Oh, jeez.
This is so fast. And you can see bloodyface, he would love to play things like Fungal Fortunes on curve, but much more important to stave off the aggression early here.
Yeah, this is quite absurd. And he's actually going to play the Blazing Battle Mage. It's just more resilient, and the Crimson Sigil Runner, it's on the far left, so that means it's going to be outcast regardless of when he decides to play it. So just most power on the board every single turn. That's going to be the name of the game. And bloodyface is just going to have to survive until he can get out the gold prize swarm. Oh,
wow.
That's disgusting.
That is ridiculous amount of power. The Frenzy Felwing is one of those cards that will be targeted by the 1702 patch coming out tomorrow, at least slotted for tomorrow. And going it down to 2 health does mean that it's more vulnerable, but it's still free if you get the damage into your opponent's health total on your turn. And now bloodyface has an option to go for this Glowfly Swarm, and it would summon, a reasonable board to try to answer what his opponent's doing.
Yeah, 5 Glowflies. There's just so much power. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 damage right now.
Jeez.
For Saiyan. That's if he Chaos Strikes and Hero Powers. Let's see what the pickup is.
Glayfoot Adept, which is particularly good when you have a weapon equipped on the following turn. I think Saiyan is evaluating, how much he wants to attack with this weapon versus set up even more board presence with Umberwing. Because if he attacks with Umberwing, he could just play another Battlecry and summon 2 1/1s onto the board. But he does lose a little bit of damage, and I think he's trying to calculate if he needs to have that extra damage over the course of a couple turns, or if he wants that board presence.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm not mistaken, this does just set up for the attack plus Claybound Adept lethal next turn. So even if his entire board gets removed, as long as bloodyface doesn't heal as well.
Or taunt.
Or taunt, yes. But that'd be very hard to do. Actually, it'd be impossible to do. Because the only taunt he would have is Exotic Mount Seller. He's already used an Innervate.
Well, there is the Iron Bark as a possibility sometimes, but it is particularly tricky if you don't have it in your hand.
Yeah,
so,
if he played Iron Bark, then he would. I'm pretty sure he would still die because that means he wouldn't be clearing everything off. I don't know, but yeah, Iron Bark for the 2 mana, that would have done it.
Jeez.
But unfortunately,
Game 1 in the books.
Yeah, that was just brutal. That Frenzy Felwing curve. What's funny is that the Frenzy Felwing is going down to 2 health in the balance patch, I believe. But that wouldn't have affected the outcome of that game, I don't think. It still would have gotten the damage.
Right, because the whole point was that Drew didn't have like a consecration or Holy Nova effect that would kill off the Frenzied Fellwing, or even just having those 2/2 treants or 2/2 Glowfly Swarms would be helping you take it out. That might come into play later on, but for now, you know, the goal isn't to nerf Demon Hunter to the point where it's unplayable as a class. The whole point is to keep it more in line so the other classes can be more competitive, because we don't want to wipe off the new class from the face of the planet on Azeroth, because that would be really sad. I mean, it's a new class, it's shiny, it's cool, it's a really sweet play style. I think Outcast is really fun mechanic. I just think that obviously it needs to be reined in a little bit, and I'm pretty sure the designers agree here twice.
I don't know, Dan. I think we've had our fun. It's been
Tell me you're over DJ.
No, I'm not, but I did play like way too much of it in like the first couple of days. I was addicted to Combo Demon Hunter for a while, and that was before like the lists even
got refined.
And so it was like I was playing like a bad version, and I was playing it super poorly. So I was still addicted to it, even with all of that holding me back. So.
Yeah, well, we're going to go into game number 2. No more Demon Hunter for the rest of this series. Saiyan had the Demon Hunter that was allowed to be played, and it won. So here we go. Druid versus the Warrior. Another matchup where I feel like Druid could struggle in, particularly the lower curve version of what Saiyan has. See, a lot of Warrior decks, they have a mid-range curve, and they have bombs, or they play other stuff that goes into Blastmaster Boom. But Saiyan, the most expensive card in his deck is the Blood Boil Brute, and then it's low curve besides that. And we know the Brute's never really played for 7 mana. If it is, it's usually in a desperation move, or that's because they had to do it. So this deck being able to be played very quickly feels like it can keep up with the Druid, and I like that this hold on the Battle Rage might end up paying off massive dividends for Saiyan if he's able to confront early game boards like that.
Yeah, well, I'll have to see. The thing I like the most about these decks is a Warmaw Challenger, and one thing I realized earlier, I was testing out the deck. Warmaw Challenger will still keep attacking something to the death, even if it gets frozen mid-combat by a water elemental. So, like, if you play Warmaw Challenger against, let's say, a 3 health water elemental, it'll attack it, get frozen, but keep attacking it until it dies. Which I thought was a funny interaction. Like, the card text is literal. It will fight it to the death no matter what happens to it in the interim. Just kind of a funny interaction there. But we saw yesterday that one of the biggest strengths of the Warmaw Challenger is just the ability for you to play it on the board if your opponent has no minions as a 3-mana 1/10. Which is just above average stat lines no matter which way you slice it. Obviously, it's more weighted towards health than attack, but Warriors have a lot of ways to buff attack at the expense of health with Inner Rage and with Cruel Taskmaster, which just saying does play one copy of in the deck. So it ends up being kind of just a net benefit. It's kind of crazy.
That is a real nice net benefit. Speaking of benefits, you know, I kind of wonder if Warmaw Challenger should be played this turn, or if it wants to challenge a 2 health minion. You know, for example, being a 1/10 and a 1/6 that is damaged, and you have things like Battle Rage and potentially ways to combo with it through Bloodsworn Mercenary, it doesn't feel that bad. So, you know, I was trying to, you know, weigh Saiyan's plays, but he doesn't really have many other ways to efficiently fill his mana curve. If he wants to play things like the Sky Raiders and Bloodstone Courser, that's much weaker than this Warmaw Challenger.
Yeah. Much.
Yeah. Much. Well said.
Thank you.
Bloodyface doesn't have the Glowfly Swarm. This is actually kind of a tricky turn because he has 10 cards. He needs to get rid of something, and there's nothing to really toss away. He's got cards that buff his cards, and he's got Starfall.
Moonfire himself. So he doesn't damage
maybe
anything.
it is Moonfire the 1/2 in Hero Power, so there's just fewer opportunities for Saiyan to get things like Battle Rage off. But this Warlock Challenger is also scary in its own right.
Yeah, or he could have like, nah, the coin's too valuable.
Right, Moonfire is a lot more expendable, it feels like.
Yeah. It's like 1 mana or 1 damage. I think I'd take the 1 damage.
Wow.
I'll hold on to 1 damage.
Armor Smith.
All right.
So, Saiyan could go for a Battle Rage for 3, but is he greedier than that? I mean, his opponent's clearly biding time, and the way your opponent's been holding coin and a full hand of cards that use Moonfire, that means that bloodyface doesn't have Wrath, he doesn't have, you know, Bog Beam to toss, like all these other cards that can be thrown away. It might just be combo pieces to set up a huge board with Kael'thas. And I think that that's something that has to be on Saiyan's mind. If it is a Kael'thas turn, what's the best way to get ahead of it? You know, am I just going to take it slow, or am I just going to go a little bit more aggressive? And it looks like he's going to favor a slightly more aggressive approach by interraging the Warlock Challenger and starting to press in.
This is mana efficient, but he's starting to give up good tools to go for the Battle Rage. But obviously, the reason why he's doing this is because it's kind of the only play that gets him on the board well enough while holding on to his risky skippers, because the risky skippers are going to be crucial for just dealing with board states. Not being proactive with risky skippers, cool, yeah, that can draw you cards, but then you may potentially lose your answer for the waves of Glowfly Swarms that may come out. So, still awkward turn again for bloodyface. Yeah, Rising Winds is the pickup. If he goes for draw there, he'll overdraw because the Twin Spell will stay in hand. He could go for Eagles, but that just seems kind of weak on the board. He could Starfall the Armorsmith to prevent some armor gain.
Would you want to Starfall? Oh wow, bloodyface hovering over the coin and indicating that he does not value that right now, as he might just go for this Mount Seller.
Okay.
Okay. That's a rough spot to be in. I was kind of thinking about the merits of using Starfall in this position. Whether I'd use this on things like the Armorsmith, whether I'd use it just directly for 5 damage onto the Warlock Challenger to prevent the punish through a Bloodsworn Mercenary. I think if Saiyan had the Bloodsworn Mercenary, though, he would have played it the previous turn, right? It would have had 2 3/9s on the board.
Yeah, because all he did was play the Livewire Lance and not attack with it with the extra 3 mana. So I think he can have a pretty good read.
All right. And now Saiyan damages himself, so Battle Rage is very much on the table. Finds Ethereal Lackey to find... Ooh, ho, another Battle Rage.
I don't know if he needs another one. Inner Rage seems... I guess he does want another one.
I mean, it means that he can use this first one a little bit lower value than he normally would like.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. But then he also has another one in his deck.
Another Warlock Challenger.
This
Fight
is huge.
that Mount Seller to the death.
This is huge. Inner Rage and Rampage on a Warlock Challenger, and it killed an exotic Mount Seller and is still a 6/6.
Right. Sort of what we were talking about, like if bloodyface perhaps used Starfall preemptively onto those onto the Warlock Challenger, perhaps it'd be easier to kill. But then you wouldn't have a board presence whatsoever because exotic Mount Seller nor this Jungle Panther would be on board.
Yeah.
So now bloodyface, he looked like he was dumping part of his hand because he has cards like Rising Wind to card draw.
Yeah.
And he also has... Yeah, he also has a lot of card draw in his deck still, so I think he was anticipating perhaps being in a situation where even if he was able to save cards like Mount Seller, that he'd still have too many cards in hand. Definitely an awkward moment here for bloodyface, and he needs to find a way to turn it around soon because Saiyan has a full hand, and pretty quickly with the anchor drawing 3 pirates, I think bloodyface is recognizing that he might be in a situation where he won't be able to stop the warrior tempo.
Time waits for no one.
Yeah, Starfall to remove here. When he unlocks 7 mana, though, things like Iron Bark will be so much better.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's trying to set up for, right? Is just making sure that the board is in as good of a position as it can be before he can go off with the exotic mount seller if he doesn't pick up something that would change that play.
Yeah, so Saiyan once more in a position where if he goes for a battle rage, he'll have a full hand. He could dump at the end though, if he so desires. At this point, looks like he's just gonna go for maximum board presence. The second Armor Smith committed. Okay, that makes sense because I think if he had played the Cruel Taskmaster and the Wormhole Challenger and Battle Rage, he would be at full cards. It'd be at 10 cards, and he would be able to dump anything.
Okay, so
I supply only the
exotic mount seller, Ironbark.
Yep.
This is going to be somewhat tough to deal with for Saiyan, just because he doesn't have, the warrior deck doesn't have just straight up direct removal. He has to attack things into it, and sometimes those big taunts can be tough to get through. All right, so now that is the second natural battle rage of the deck, and the ethereal lackey battle rage. So, just saying, if he wanted to, could draw the rest of his deck this turn. He could deck out.
Yes, ostensibly, Saiyan could hit fatigue this turn if he wanted to. I think his priority will be to evaluate his hand, but more importantly, I think he wants to pick up his combo pieces here. Yeah,
he doesn't want to draw his whole deck.
Right, and he's gonna overdraw if he ends up not trading that minion in. Jeez. Well, he's not fully overdrawn yet, but if he cannot actually afford to play another battle rage for quite some time.
Well, the thing here is that he needs to find a way to deal with this exotic mount seller.
Yeah, and it looks like he will have to interrage to kill it. Does end up dealing with the Emperor Cobra, and I think this is in the end, this is a situation that I think bloodyface is happier with, because he does lose his second mount seller, but he did clear off a big portion of the board, including the second Wormhole Challenger. So yeah, a Bloodsworn Mercenary would have potentially ruined a lot of those plans, and bloodyface finds the Overflow. However, Overflow will heal the Indratovir back to a 2/6 minion, and that is not ideal for his deck.
No, not at all. I mean, that was a decent, I think a decent turn overall from Saiyan, right? He drew a lot of his deck. He was able to clear off the exotic mount seller, which is the second one. The one thing is, he did missequence slightly at the end there. He missed 2 armor, but I highly doubt that's going to matter, because he attacked with the Armor Smith before. Unless I'm missing something and he had to attack with the Armor Smith before, but I just don't think so.
Right.
Since it was trading in anyway. Terran Gorfine picked up, so with Serpent on board, that could be some big potential swings here, and I think I'm just going to go for it. Just put more power on the board, right?
Oh, absolutely. I was kind of searching for any kind of inner rage or Cruel Taskmaster to Bloodsworn Mercenary, because then you get the big combo, mega combo, if you will. Because then you're able to summon a copy of the egg, then kill it, then
the beast,
summon it. Saiyan summons the beast. Glowfly Swarm, getting all of these swarms onto the board, and bloodyface trying to fight back for board presence. Saiyan has 9, 10, 16, 20 damage to the Korkan Elite. If he can damage it...
He is the Risky Skipper. So,
yes. So that should be lethal.
Yeah, should be good. As long as he just makes sure that he attacks first with... it doesn't even matter. He wouldn't even have to attack with the Witchy Lackey, because he has enough damage with it.
Right.
Anyway, just a matter of board space, and he has plenty of board space because the Korkan Elite is going to kill off that Witchy Lackey. So, nicely spotted from Saiyan, and that's the benefit of drawing through nearly your entire deck with the Battle Rages.
Yep.
And bloodyface also had a good amount of draw himself. He was still 4 cards behind.
Poor bloodyface. Seemed like he had a really awkward pan out that game, and Saiyan had a very good one. being able to get Anchor early, which is, as you can see, super important for the deck, and picking up multiple copies of Battle Rage in order to keep up that gas. You saw that Spell Druid is one of the best decks at drawing cards right now. And yet, Saiyan was the one who reached card 25 before bloodyface was even able to get his first meaningful board development. I think that exotic Mountain Sellers were just a Hail Mary play and hoping that maybe some of the summons would help bring him back. But, bloodyface didn't really waste any resources there. I think the one argument you might be able to make was the debate between Overflow and Fungal Fortunes on that turn.
Yep.
And I think that's a tough position to be in because Fungal Fortune obviously draws more, but I think if you don't land something like the Glowfly Swarm, which he did, but we can't know for sure. If he did end up landing that, then he would be okay. But if he didn't, he would have drawn fewer cards and he would have had worse development anyways. So very understandable to go for an Overflow in that position, but at the same time, like bloodyface was in a really bad spot either way.
Yeah, it's tough to evaluate those types of situations because obviously we can be results oriented and see what he would have picked up with those 3 spells. But alas, I think trying to get the mana out of the way, because if he didn't find anything and didn't find card draw, his play was so much weaker. Or if he discarded Kael'thas. So. But let's get into the next one. Saiyan going for the sweep here over bloodyface. Again, as Dan mentioned earlier in the broadcast, is single elim now. Semifinal, finals. That's it. If you lose now, you're out. And you do go away with the 4 points for making it to the semifinals, but obviously would be quite bittersweet for any player. And we're going to have Druid versus Warlock.
Yeah, so this is a matchup that I feel a lot more confident as the Druid player. Every time I feel like I say something like, oh, this matchup has been going one direction almost the entire time, it tends to go the other way. So I'm not going to preemptively say,
Curse it, Dan.
My thoughts about the matchup numbers, but it has been Druid favored. And, Warlock has shown that it can compete, but it is tricky. Part of the ability to compete, though, is something reflective of what Saiyan's hand looks like right now. He's got Galakron in hand. He's got Galakron activated. He's got Veiled Worshipper, so he could dump cards, and he's got AoE removal through the form of Crazy Netherwing and Plague of Flames, rather. So, really good start here for Saiyan. Also, a pretty solid start for bloodyface. Overgrowth, while he has Kael'thas in hand and Overflow, this is more like what we expect the Spell Druid to do.
Yeah, this is quite insane. His goal is gonna be to try and make just a massive board that can't be dealt with, which is incredibly possible right now. I just like to sit back and see this. He's gonna get the Wrath for one. He's gonna be able to follow that up with Overflow, and then from there it's all about picking up the cheap 0- spells. He's got Innervates. He's got the Iron Barks. He's got another Bog Beam. He's got Moonfires. And then he wants to go Glowfly Swarm into more cheap spells, into more draw.
Yep.
But he just picks up the 2 0-mana spells. So his chain will stop after just the Glowfly Swarm, if that's what he opts for.
Right. And I think Glowfly Swarm is more than okay in this position. You summon a full board still. The only thing is that it is somewhat vulnerable to things like Crazed Netherwing, and you'd much rather just Glowfly Swarm Soul the Forest back-to-back turns.
Yeah.
And I think that's what bloodyface has realized. He's like, you know what? Instead of just dumping the Glowfly Swarm, I have 2 Soul the Forests. If I can just create 2, maybe 3 waves of non-stop threats, Saiyan might buckle under the pressure because he might not have the exact removal tool that he needs.
Computing.
Saiyan has the Dark Skies. Dark Skies is premium removal, though, so I wonder if Saiyan would prefer to use another card to remove this Kael'thas instead.
Saiyan's got the Warlock deck that just has like all the removal. He's got the 2 Plague of Flames, obviously, double Rain of Fire, double Moarg Artificer, obviously double Dark Skies, and then the Crazed Netherwings. So it's about as much like of the, AoE small stuff removal as you can possibly get from Warlock. The only thing he's missing is like the unstable Fellbolt, but that's mostly for dealing with a minion on turn 1, like against Demon Hunter. But he's banning Demon Hunter instead of like the wide board states. So this is like as anti-Druid as it gets, nearly, which seems to be a theme in his lineup.
Does Sane even want to dump this coin, by the way? I don't think so. Pretty much the coin opens up options for him to like coin Galakron or to squeeze in a more mana-efficient play. And his hand honestly has most of the stuff he needs. He picked up 2 other forms of AoE in the Crazed Netherwing and the Rain of Fire. And he loses Sacrificial Pact, but he was at full life, and I don't think that's the pressing card that he needs anyways. So that was actually one of the better outcomes for Saiyan to burn off the top of the deck. And that's a really nice spot there from Saiyan to realize that he might not need that card off the deck, but he does need almost all access to his mana crystals this turn.
Yeah.
That being said, this doesn't look like an opportunity to go for a Galakron. This looks like you would potentially get run over. So what does Saiyan do in this spot? I'm looking at Crazed Netherwing as one of the primary options, but it doesn't actually do anything in terms of how much power is on the board.
No. He could do that and then like Plague of Flames, but that like gives up his board.
And he doesn't have the Moarg Artificer to combine with Dark Skies.
Nope, or with Rain of Fire. Everything's kind of awkward.
Oh wow, he is going for the Galakron. Okay.
All right, well, he could get like Priestess of Fury.
He's really hoping that there isn't the severe punish to potentially end the game here for bloodyface. Finds pretty reasonably statted demon, but
the imprisoned observer.
How much damage can bloodyface do here? If he had Gift of the Wild, he had the ability to Gift of the Wild, innervate Savage Roar, but he doesn't have a couple of those cards.
The imprisoned observer deals 2 damage when it awakens. So
right, it's the mage card.
Mage AoE card. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
This is. It kind of makes things awkward for bloodyface. I mean, it's still 2 turns away, and right now it just looks like, you know, he's getting in a ton of damage. But it might open up some opportunities for Saiyan. At least gives him something to plan around. I don't think bloodyface will play into it by any stretch of the imagination, but. Oh, there it is.
Wow.
Okay.
Savage Roar ripped.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's got him covered a couple times over. I understand the risk entirely from Saiyan. If your opponent has Savage Roar, he would still need some change, like Savage Roar plus Power of the Wild, or Savage Roar plus, you know, like we said, Innervate and Gift of the Wild, or something of that sort. Either way, though, you know, that was a tough position for the Warlock to be in, and Druid gets a crucial victory. Obviously, because bloodyface was on elimination point, but you know, Druid should be beating things like the Warlock in the big picture. So a very important win for bloodyface.
Yeah, just saying, has been like scraping some wins against Druid with the Warlock deck, but each one has seemed so difficult compared to how easy it seems sometimes for the Druid to beat him. Like he had all of his removal lineup yesterday with Moarg Artificer plus Rain of Fire for wave 1, and then a full board with like Plague of Flames plus Moarg Artificer Rain of Fire for the second wave. So you have to have that type of pan out in order to deal with each individual wave of threats from the Druid, and even then you can still lose because Kael'thas or Exotic Mount Seller can reload at a time where you're not expecting it or don't have the answers for it. So still behind for bloodyface though. He's down 2-1 in the series and has to beat this Warlock twice more if he wants to move on to the finals. So not out of the woods yet, but definitely a solid win. And even though it's expected, even though you should be able to win those, it still feels good to at least get his first win of the day under his belt.
Yep, I'm curious how the Hunter will fare against the Warlock, but for now we're going to go to Warrior versus the Warlock. A dynamic that I actually haven't been able to see too much on the ladder, specifically with the egg approach, but bloodyface again has like eggs and bombs and a couple of different like variants compared to the more all-in nature of Saiyan's deck, where Saiyan's deck is a lot more damage-oriented or enrage if you are a fan of classic Hearthstone. Bloodyface is a lot more just mid-range approach with a bunch of tempo tools.
Yeah.
As the Warlock, he threw away Crazed Netherwing, and I always thought that was one of the more important cards. But what are you really looking for if you're saying, is it just the same approach of having the Invoke cards early with the Galakron?
I think it's just Invoke. That's pretty much the case in what feels like almost every matchup. Yeah, it just unlocks so much, right? Unlocks Revealed Worshippers. It lets you have the option of playing Galakron on curve. It also just unlocks a lot of your other stuff. It can soften things because you're summoned. It's board presence. You can soften things up for Rain of Fire or for Dark Skies. It gives you board for Plague of Flames. So it just gives you options overall. You can try and get fancy, but if you keep a Crazed Netherwing and you don't pick up a dragon, it ends up being not a worthwhile keep. And like Dragonblight Cultist just has such a high win rate across almost every matchup because of its just board presence, Invoke, everything.
Totally.
Oof. This is... Well, Nether Breath is something, but with both Veiled Worshippers in hand and full mulling for Invoke and not picking it up, this is going to be rough.
Not only that, but he has expensive cards, right? It's one thing to mulligan and not get the Invoke cards, but to basically have 2 dead cards in the early game in your hand is kind of rough as a Warlock. You can see Saiyan felt a little stressed from it based off seeing his mulligan.
Destroy.
Yeah.
He does have a way to deal with this Bomb Wrangler through the form of Nether Breath. Does allow him to tap as well, but he starts to enter territory where he doesn't necessarily have even a good follow play on the following turn, because Crazed Netherwing will destroy the egg from what he sees, and I'm not sure if he necessarily wants to do that.
Oh, jeez.
Maybe instead you just, maybe instead you just develop the board a little bit and see if you can fight back that way. Just let your opponent develop the bombs.
Mm-hmm. Try and react with whatever.
Yeah. Oh my. A Rampage drawn, but not enough to follow up, it looks like. Well, you could just have the Armorsmith.
We also have seen over the past few days just how awkward having like so many weapon swings in your hand can be. We've seen a lot of Warrior players run into a situation where they're not playing their weapons early, and because of that, their hand gets bogged down with so many of the weapon swings, especially with, obviously Corsair Cache giving you extras. It's not necessarily like a negative, right? We saw Muzzy do it yesterday and still win in some cases, but it's something to note that it seemed like a negative in some of the circumstances where you just have this hand with, after you've expended all of your cards, you have this hand with 3 weapons and 8 weapon swings, and you just don't have time to use all of them. So that was me arguing for the merit of just equipping a Wrench Caliber and starting to chop away. But obviously tempo is a big key moving forward, and you can follow up that minion tempo with weapons to protect. So I understand why. Just wanted to throw it out there. Oh.
Yeah, so pretty good outcome here for Saiyan. I think he wants to protect his life total as much as he can. Albeit that he's probably sad that he ended up letting this Serpent Egg be able to trade into his dragon. But bloodyface won't even have to do that if you just Wrench Caliber and push his face. Kind of like what you're talking about. Develop that board first, then use the weapons afterwards as continuation pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Bloodyface, of course, equipping the correct weapon, the one that was buffed.
Yep. Muzzy ran into a situation yesterday where he equipped the unbuffed one.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit sloppy yesterday from Muzzy, but overall still really cool to see him get pretty far into this tournament.
Yeah. I wonder how the night was yesterday for Saiyan and Muzzy, since Saiyan was the one who knocked out Muzzy in the decider match of Group B to make it into the top 4 in a very close series as well. Went all the way to the 5th game. Obviously, we've mentioned it many times on broadcast over the past 2 days seasons of Grandmasters that Saiyan and Muzzy lived together.
Destroy.
I don't think we've mentioned it enough yet. Did you know Saiyan, by the way, is roommates with Muzzy?
Oh, what? Really? Wow, no. That's crazy. And they're both on Radiance?
Yeah. They both play Hearthstone?
Wow. And they're both Grandmasters? That's insane.
And they're both ridiculously handsome.
Wow. This is insane.
And they're both my best men at my wedding. I haven't
That's
asked them
insane.
yet, but yeah, what are the chances? Bloodyface.
They're both the
Bloodyface can be
50% godfathers of my child. Did you know that?
That's great. If something happens to you, God forbid, of course, anything happens to you and Karen, then we can split the baby in half and give one half to Saiyan, one half
to say one half to Muzzy. Yeah, that's how a 50% split works.
Yes, I believe that is how custody works.
Yep.
I'm clearly well versed in this. Looks like Saiyan gets the clear with the Dark Skies. Bloodyface had 2 Kor'kon leads, might as well just pressure for it with them. Finds the Bloodsworn Mercenary, so he has a classic combination: Risky Skipper, Bomb Wrangler, and the Bloodsworn Mercenary. And I think that is pretty much the only play that's good here. I think everything else would be a little bit too weak. And he might get the ability to snipe his opponent's minion. Damage to face for 3 isn't bad either.
No. There was the argument of holding on to the Risky Skipper, because if he holds on to it, then he would have had to hold on to everything and just play Bomb Wrangler on the board.
Right.
Risky Skipper, Kor'kon Elite, and Bloodsworn Mercenary would have been 12 damage.
Right.
So then he could say, oh, well, if I can deal 12 bursts from hand next turn and you draw a bomb, I win. But that's very wishful thinking.
Oof.
Yikes.
Yeah. Saiyan was really hoping for a more meaningful demon. I think the plan was to get Galakrond to summon a strong minion, perhaps use Rain of Fire and have that minion absorb some boom bot damage, and then Sacrificial Pact it for health. But this is a tough situation. If Saiyan goes for a Rain of Fire, this could obviously just straight up kill his own minion. And from the Sacrificial Pact not being green anymore, that looks to be the case. 3 more boombot damage. These boombots are absolutely destroying Saiyan. And another weapon being drawn. You kind of mentioned how it feels sometimes hard to get all the weapon charges out of your hand. And we're running into that exact problem here. But if you're Bloodyface, still feels good to get that damage in now. I wonder which weapon he would want to equip here. Is it Anchor or is it Wrench Caliber?
Maybe he can just armor up and then evaluate next turn. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the only thing is that if he like picks up
Blood Boil Brute.
Yeah, some other card that he wants to play, or even just like Blastmaster Boom. Oh wow, forget that. Bomb being drawn, Bloodyface gets the win.
Yeah.
And just like that, Bloodyface is at the doorstep of a reverse sweep. 2 games down, 2 games up, and now we are tied going into the final game where the winner gets a spot in the finals.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of fitting that we've come down to game number 5 here. I just think just how the decks line up in general. Because I'm pretty sure the bomb variation of the warrior, I don't want to say that because it seemed kind of the situation we ran into earlier. As soon as you say that it's favored, it just starts going in the opposite direction. It feels like the core of the bomb warrior deck, the bomb tempo battle rage warrior, whatever you want to call it. Warlock has so much trouble beating because they have to deal with boards and also have to worry about weapon damage and bomb damage coming at them at every step of the game. Yeah, you really have to like get a lot of invoke cards early and get Galakrond on the board early, because just having a big board is what counters warrior the most, because they don't have direct removal and it forces them to use those cards defensively. But I of course think it's just fitting. Both these players have had close series the last couple of days. That was game 5.
Yep, so game 5 will be Hunter versus Warlock. This is a matchup that I haven't gotten to see very much, specifically the aggro face burn Hyper Hunter.
Yeah, I don't
so
know about this one.
fast and so annoying to play against because it's just they like toxic reinforcements and they start hero powering and just like I can just feel my blood pressure rising, TJ.
Yeah, and the Warlock who's just trying to, use their removal to clear minions off the board. Well, if you're just using your first however many turns to clear minions, and those minions are just damaging you, and there's hero powers at the same time, I don't know, that becomes difficult. The one thing about this deck is it packs a lot of healing. It does damage itself a lot, but it also heals itself a lot. You have double Sacrificial Pact, double Nether Breath. Nether Breath can be combined with more Artificer to be double the healing. So you can stave off a lot of the damage and the pressure, but it just comes at you so fast. And that can oftentimes just mean you don't have time to pick up heal. You don't want to life tap because you're like you said, you can just feel your health disappearing. It's stressful. It's very stressful.
I mean, you can also see it. It's not really an intuition. It's every single turn. It's like every card in this deck is designed to deal damage. The exception might be exactly what bloodyface drew. It's tracking, which draws more damage. The question becomes, how do some of the new cards from the Ashes of Outland expansion fit into Aggro Hunter? One of them is New Secret Pack Tactics. Another one's in the hand. It's Scavenger's Ingenuity, which is draw a beast, give it +3/+3, which is surprisingly scary because there's not many beasts in this deck. I believe there's Augmented Porcupine, and there is the Phase Stalker. That's what it's called. I think those are the only beasts in the entire deck.
Yep.
And I don't want either of them to get buffed because they're both very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, they're both absolute units. Phase Stalker just maybe not as straight up aggressive, but it's hard to remove, which allows you to thin your deck by hero power and hitting the secrets out, which provides a ton of value. And Augmented Porcupine, a 5/7 Augmented Porcupine is just the scariest thing ever. Because not only is it just hitting you each turn, you also have to worry about the 5 damage that it's going to deal once it dies.
Right.
And you have to be careful of how you use it if you want to like balance the damage between face and the minion. If you want it all to go into minions and lose your board, and then you lose to something else, I don't know. It just becomes quite difficult to deal with. But justsaiyan has, he does have board here, but the damage is starting to pile in.
He has board, but the life total is starting to build up the other way. Dragonblight Cultist and a low curve in general seems to be very good option here for Saiyan. He has Kronks, so if he's even fortunate enough to pick up Galakrond naturally, you can use Kronks as a defensive maneuver to gain life and perhaps even end the game. The one thing about bloodyface is that he's already conceded board control as early as turn 2. He just went for a card draw source, and obviously he has 2 toxic reinforcements, so he'd prefer to go for that, but this Phase Stalker, hopefully for bloodyface, weeds out one of those really important secrets. We talked about Pack Tactics, but he also has Explosive Trap.
It is Pack Tactics.
Pack Tactics summons a 3/3 copy, so 2 mana 3/3. Pretty solid. Saiyan does have the board clear. Yep, with the Devoted Maniac, and really important for him to address that. But now here comes the really annoying part. Bloodyface has the hero power into the toxic reinforcements being completed. And then he could even add more pressure with Eaglehorn Bow, and with 6 damage guaranteed in the Leper Gnome, you're already looking at what feels like 11 life.
Oh jeez, this is this is not looking good. He has no healing whatsoever. Crazed Netherwing is not active, but even if it was, you would deal 3 damage to yourself and then 6 damage from the Leper Gnomes. So you'd be at 8.
So like that's the thing about this
5?
deck. It sneaks up on you. You're like, well, he only played 1 minion on turn 1, and then he kind of just hero powered the next 2 turns. Or not hero power the next 2 turns, but rather he ramped up the next 2 turns. And you feel like as a hyper aggro deck, if you do that on turns 2 and 3, you theoretically should be just like really far behind. But things like toxic reinforcements, it doesn't feel that impressive when you read the card, unless of course you are an expert Hearthstone player or just card game veteran in general, you can recognize that. But when you see it in practice, combining with the Hunter Hero power every single turn, you're just like, what on earth is this deck?
Yeah,
and now bloodyface has an opportunity to drop this Dragon Bane and just set up a 2-turn lead.
Yep.
Saiyan is in big trouble. Wow.
Hit face.
Yep.
Well, he can technically pick up Nether Breath from this Veiled Worshipper and then survive from what he can see on board, since there'd only be 5 damage. But doesn't even hit that. Doesn't even have a demon.
He has
well, Morgue Artificer is a demon.
Yeah, he does have the Morgue Artificer, but that doesn't solve the big problem that he can't remove that Dragon Bane. A quick concede from Saiyan, and the gamble known as the Face Aggro Hunter from bloodyface pays off with a Game 5 victory. Reverse sweep completed. The Warlock drops 3 times. And there's a lot to unpack here, but the first thing I want to say is always great to see someone's risk coming through in the clutch. So definitely hats off to bloodyface. Second thing I want to say, another finals appearance in a tournament that's super stacked. bloodyface is beyond consistent. He is showing domination over this region right now. Over the past, well, it's extended so past 7-8 months now for bloodyface. So really, really impressive. Particularly in Grandmasters. And then the third thing is, you can see why Saiyan really wanted to win with the Warrior versus the Hunter, because if he got a chance to play Warlock, it looked completely one-sided, to say the least.
Yeah, it really did. And bloodyface, the only player to bring Hunter in Americas. So you calling it a risk, that's I'd say a pretty big risk, considering it wasn't on anybody else's radar. Not even like just talking about Face Hunter, but Hunter in general. So I like the kind of capitalizing on maybe a not so refined metagame, which is Face Hunter's mantra, is saying, hey, your deck's not refined, well, I have just completely efficient damage that's going to run you over. So bloodyface will move on to the Week 1 Swiss Finals. He'll face either Empanizado or Frozen. And yeah, should be fun. I think every time we've seen that Hunter deck from bloodyface, it just has run over. It seems unstoppable. Obviously, you know, it'll have dead draws eventually, or it'll have times when it gets close but not there. But so far, it's just looked unstoppable.
So as we go into series number 2, who